The Gaza Strip, a densely populated enclave devastated by years of conflict, now faces an unprecedented challenge: rebuilding a war-shattered territory at a staggering cost of $70 billion. The scale of destruction is almost incomprehensible, with over 55 million tons of rubble still blocking access to vital infrastructure. The United Nations Development Programme and its partners emphasize that recovery will require not only massive financial investments, but also clear governance, security arrangements, and coordination among international donors. Egypt participated with the UK's Wilton Park informal meeting on innovative financing for Gaza's reconstruction. The session, co-chaired by Egypt, the UK, and Palestine, prepares for the Cairo Conference on Gaza recovery in November. While early pledges and logistical talks have emerged involving Arab and Western nations, the road ahead is fraught with complexities such as securing a post-war administration for Gaza and clearing lethal debris. Can the international community overcome these vast obstacles to rebuild Gaza sustainably and justly? These are questions we're going to ask here on In Depth. Welcome. UN agencies estimate that $70 billion will be needed to rebuild Gaza after 2 years of Israeli war, with $20 billion required in the first 3 years. According to UNDP's Jaco Sillers, the destruction across the enclave has reached 84%, rising to 92% in Gaza City. The Strip has been devastated by relentless Israeli bombardment, leaving few areas untouched. The war on Gaza has generated at least 55 million tons of rubble mixed with unexploded explosives and human remains. UNDP teams on the ground are supporting 2.1 million residents, providing clean water, emergency employment, and medical supplies while clearing debris. So far, 81,000 tons of debris have been removed to open access for humanitarian operations and restore basic services. Sillers reported strong donor interest from Arab, European, and U.S. partners for Gaza's early recovery efforts. The recent ceasefire signed in Sharm el-Sheikh by Egyptian and U.S. presidents and the leaders of Qatar and Turkey secured the exchange of Israeli and Palestinian detainees. Yet aid deliveries remain insufficient. Humanitarian agencies, including UNICEF, OCHA, and the ICRC, warned that conditions remain critical, with over 300,000 Palestinians moving north since the ceasefire. According to the Egyptian State Information Service, Egypt took part in an informal technical meeting organized by UK's Wilton Park Foundation from October 13th to the 15th, led by Ambassador Mahmoud Omar, the Assistant Foreign Minister and Director of the Palestine Department. Co-chaired by Egypt, the UK, and Palestine, the discussions explored innovative financing mechanisms for Gaza's reconstruction amid the massive destruction and soaring costs. Planned before the recent ceasefire in Gaza, the meeting forms part of preparations for the Cairo International Conference on Early Recovery, Reconstruction and Development in Gaza, set for late November. Participants praised Egypt's central role in mediating the ceasefire and advancing reconstruction plans. Following President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's announcement, Egypt is completing preparations for the Cairo Conference in coordination with the U.S., regional and international partners, donor countries, UN bodies, financial institutions, the private sector, and civil society.
In Gaza, the silence after war reveals a landscape of devastation. The occupation army's 2-year-long offensive has left around 84% of the Strip destroyed, with homes, schools, hospitals, and vital infrastructure reduced to rubble. In certain parts of Gaza, like in Gaza City, it's up to 92%. The United Nations Development Program estimates that reconstruction could cost up to $70 billion, making it one of the most expensive recovery efforts in modern history. It is also estimated that the two-year war has produced at least 55 million tons of rubble. The debris, mixed with unexploded ordnance and human remains, poses immense safety challenges. Specialists stress that clearing and recycling materials will take years and require large-scale international assistance. Gaza's water, power, and sanitation systems have collapsed. More than 70% of facilities are destroyed, and all 6 wastewater treatment plants have been hit. The Gaza power plant remains inoperable, and agricultural lands are razed. Without urgent restoration of water, electricity, and farming, public health and food security remain in severe danger. A UNDP official has said that there are promising early indications from countries, including the United States, as well as Arab and European states, about the willingness to contribute to the cost of rebuilding Gaza. Egypt is expected to play a central coordinating role, facilitating aid convoys, engineering support, and border logistics through Rafah. The humanitarian situation remains dire. According to the UN, food, medical supplies, and clean water are still reaching Palestinians in extremely limited quantities. For Gaza's 2.3 million residents, rebuilding is not just about bricks and cement. It's about restoring dignity, independence, and life after destruction.
In a region haunted by cycles of destruction and fragile truces, rebuilding Gaza is more than a humanitarian project. It's a political test of global credibility. To explore the path ahead, we're joined by Mohammed Osman, an international relations specialist from Cairo, and Mohammed Abdul Halim, the director of the Egyptian Enterprise for Policy and Studies Center from Cairo as well. Both for joining me here on In Depth. Let's start off with you, Mr. Osman. Now, how do you assess the significance of the $70 billion estimate for the Gaza rebuilding? This is quite a large number of, and it's a quite large sum.
Thank you for having me, Raham. I'm not surprised by this huge figure, of course, or this huge estimate for the reconstruction, because the Gaza Strip, as your report very accurately pointed out, over 84% of the strip has been destroyed. These are proportions of destruction that are unprecedented since World War II. We have never seen this sheer amount of destruction in any war zone, in terms of proportionality, of course, like what we are seeing and witnessing in Gaza now since World War II. Even the war in Ukraine, which has been going on for 3.5 years, and even those cities have been destroyed, but most of Ukraine is still intact, and so is Russia. So as you can see, this is very unprecedented, Rahab. And of course, the size and the amount of sheer human suffering in the Gaza Strip, which was caused by this devastation, is insurmountable. So I think that gathering the funds, the necessary funds, of course, for the beginning of the reconstruction process is essential. And 70 billion is just the initial estimate, Riham. The actual cost might even be substantially higher than that. The latest estimate before that, which was the Egyptian estimate during the Cairo summit, which adopted the Egyptian plan of reconstruction, which later on became the Egyptian Arab Islamic Reconstruction Plan, estimated the destruction back then to cost about $50 billion. Now, a few months later, it's only logical that it increased to 70 billion after many more parts of Gaza were destroyed, especially Gaza City, the largest city in Gaza. Over half of it has been completely wiped off the map. The same goes for the city of Khan Yunis. Half of it is completely wiped off the map, and the other half is severely damaged. A city like Rafah or Beit Hanun, these cities do not even exist anymore, completely flattened. So these are images that we have never seen, Rehab. The infrastructure, the medical facilities, the the civilian services system, all of that has been completely obliterated by the war. However, of course, before we can undertake the reconstruction process, certain political prerequisites have to exist on the ground. First of them, of course, is a stable governance of post-war Gaza and the withdrawal of the Israeli army of occupation, at least from the main urban centers of Gaza, which has not happened yet. Israel still controls about 55% or from 55 to 58% of the Gaza Strip. And we have heard very, very worrying reports coming out of the United States, where the US is hinting that they might start the reconstruction in areas which are not quote unquote under the control of Hamas, which means the areas that are under the control of the Israeli army and the gangs of mercenaries employed by the Israeli army, like that of Yasser Abu Shabab and others. This is very dangerous. This means that the strip is about to be potentially divided into certain spheres of influence and might even pave the way for a civil conflict inside Gaza. So this is we are at a very dangerous crossing point there, Rehab. And I think that the Trump agreement, or the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement, the Trump plan, needs to be applied with regards to the post-war governance and also the reconstruction of Gaza very quickly, because time is definitely not on the time of the Palestinians.
Okay, Mr. Abdul Halim, if we can get your take here. Now, you heard Mr. Osborne talking about the idea of the situation currently being very delicate in the Gaza Strip. Now, also, what's a big issue is obviously getting the money into the reconstruction process. How critical is the international cooperation among the donors when it comes to meeting this $70 billion goal? Is this attached to, for instance, with how the situation is currently right now in Gaza, or are people dragging their feet, for instance, because they may fear that, the war will start up again and they're going to have to lose money over the reconstruction process?
Thank you. But before talking about the Gaza reconstruction, I want to talk about the situation in Gaza and who will govern it, so that we can trust them. But there are some international stances that they can do after the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement. We need to follow the Security Council resolution, like the Resolution 692, when they obligated the destroyer to pay Kuwait. And so, yes, we need the same resolution. We need Israel to be forced to pay a part of this, but they are not complying to the international law up till now, unfortunately. But Israel has been playing games when it came to releasing the bodies and the detainees, and so all of this will stop any budget from entering until the war is completely stopped. They need around $70 billion, and they need around to remove around 55 million tons of rubble. And so this all increases the budget for the reconstruction. But of course, we need some resolutions or international laws that come from the Security Council, specifically after the Sharm el-Sheikh steps. They need, and all the countries need to commit to implementing it, and we need a framework so that forces Israel to pay up for what they damaged. This is what the international law says. Any occupying country or force needs to do this, and we need a transitional government for the Gaza Strip, as Egypt has called for a conference to support the healing and reconstruction of Gaza. We need a transitional government of Palestinians, and we need Hamas to withdraw so that anyone who's willing to give, or all the countries are willing to give, can trust it. So we need to implement phase one fully, but we will be waiting in the upcoming days to see if Israel will try to hinder any phase or point of the agreement And so yes, we need to and to guarantee this, we need to go to the Security Council and have them guarantee that they will be paying for the destruction.
Okay, Mr. Osman, now if we can get your take here as well. Now, Egypt obviously has played a significant role in reaching the ceasefire agreement and so far at this point. But also, there's a lot going on and the road ahead is quite long, especially when it comes to the reconstruction efforts. Now, you heard Mr. Abdul Halim there talk about the idea of having the Israelis pay for the reconstruction efforts because this is, an obligation under international law. Is this something that's actually possible? And do you think that Egypt could possibly pressure not just obviously the Israelis, but other partners into donating towards the reconstruction efforts?
Well, before I answer your question, I just wanted to convey my greetings to Dr. Muhammad Abdul Halim. He's a dear friend, and I'm glad that I'm featured with him today on Qnews' screen. Proceeding to your question, Raham, of course, I think that this is a very logical proposition. It is definitely ethical, because Israel is the one that destroyed the Gaza Strip. So it's only natural that they should be held responsible for the rebuilding process, that they should bear at least part of the cost of the reconstruction. However, Raham, you and I very well know, and maybe Dr. Muhammad would agree with us, this is not going to happen, unfortunately, because even the European Union yesterday, the foreign relations spokespersons of the European Union was holding a press conference, and a very smart and intelligent European reporter asked her a question. He told her that you are urging and demanding that Russia pay reparations for Ukraine after the war so that Ukraine can rebuild. Does the same apply to Israel and Gaza? Should Israel fund the reconstruction of Gaza? And do you know what did the European foreign policy official say, Raham? She said, I don't know, we'll have to look into that. So not even the Europeans will bother pressuring the Israelis to do just that. I think the Israelis need to be pressured to even adhere to this agreement and withdraw from the Gaza Strip. Maybe Egypt.
But do you think, given that set of circumstances that you just said, withdrawing from the Gaza Strip, clearly they're dragging their feet and they're not really doing a lot to do that. And they're also, as you said earlier, reinforcing certain gangs and so forth. Do you think that they may play a role in reconstructing the part that they already occupy so they can maintain the occupation?
This actually was proposed by the Americans. The Americans are the ones who said that they might open it for reconstruction. And of course, we do not know what reconstruction they will follow, because possibly this reconstruction means that they might have to remove or appropriate the property of the civilians in this area. This is very dangerous to leave this up to the Americans and to the Israelis. Egypt has been very eager to come up with a reconstruction plan under international supervision, and with the United Nations involved, so that it would be in line with international law, so that it would not be a cover for the appropriation of Palestinian property, for example, or rendering Palestinians homeless. Reham, Israel so far has not abandoned its dreams and ideas about the displacement of the Palestinians. Now they are looking for creating the conditions for the idea of voluntary departure, and Israel still opens its ports and airports for Palestinians to depart should they choose to do so. And they are saying that even though the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement does reserve the right for every Palestinian who leaves Gaza to return to Gaza, however, of course, without American pressure, sustained American pressure, there is no guarantees that Israel will adhere to anything. So the problem is, Raham, that it's quite possible that Israel, without even returning to the war, will try to create the conditions on the ground that will impede the active or realistic reconstruction of the Gaza Strip and the early rehabilitation of the Gaza Strip, and also will obstruct means by which a stable governance can be actually imposed on the Gaza Strip, and maybe even foment civil war inside Gaza, which they are doing now by funding criminal gangs like that of Abu Shabab and others, in order to create a state of constant liquidity and chaos in Gaza. So this is a very, very dangerous possibility, Reham. And I think that the United States needs to act decisively to pressure the Israelis so that they would stop doing this. And of course, the Israelis are always attempting to play the game of stifling the entry of humanitarian aid. A couple of days ago, they said that they will not let the 600 trucks in. They would only let 300 trucks in, and then they retracted their position and allowed in 600 trucks. But today, the Rafah border crossing was supposed to be open today. Now we know that it has been delayed by the Israelis indefinitely, even though the arrangements of the logistical arrangements for its reopening have been worked out, including the involvement of the Palestinian Authority and the European Union. So it seems that Israel is stalling every now and then and dragging your feet, as you very impeccably described it, Rehab. So this will require more decisive American pressure, and of course more pressure from the European Union and from the international community and from the Arab mediators in order to push the implementation of this agreement forward and ensure its success.
Okay, Mr. Abdul Halim, if we can get your take there. Now, what do you think are the main challenges that may face the financing of the Gaza reconstruction, considering the region's extensive destruction? And also, what kind of challenges on the ground do you think would come up when it comes to the reconstruction process itself?
There is more than one challenge, a political challenge, and not deciding on who will govern the Gaza Strip and what the Egyptian country has said, like trying to reconcile between Hamas and them, and then to have some elections and to govern the Strip in a political way. And so this is a great challenge. And then one of the other challenges is the infrastructure itself. We don't have an infrastructure. There is no country, basically. There is no strip. And so what can be expected is that there is a conference in November for the contributors. We need to take some steps so that they can we can have a humanitarian reconstruction for this strip that has suffered from the genocide. And also there is also the effect of what happened. And so these are all challenges that face the strip itself. And like Dr. Othman said about the idea of them having more arms, when they are trying to reconstruct, maybe this will lead to a civil war. And so this is a challenge. We're not having a legitimate government to take over this strip. And so we need a clear plan for a sustainable development. And so then the large challenge, of course, is Israel not complying to any agreement, and they will try to manipulate things, and they have some things up their sleeve to do in the strip. And so maybe they will withdraw to the yellow lines and then have some kind of conflict and then go back to destroying the enclave.
Okay, Mr. Osman, now how do you see or might see the innovative financing mechanisms that have been discussed at Wilton Park meetings in a way to address Gaza's sort of prohibitive reconstruction costs?
Of course, as you just said there, Egypt is organizing and holding many international meetings and is in constant consultation with international stakeholders in order to arrange or make all the arrangements for the proper reconstruction of the Gaza Strip, which will probably be, if it happens, under the it will all be based upon the blueprint of the Egyptian reconstruction plan, which is the most sound plan to be applied in this regards. And naturally, of course, many of the companies that will work in the reconstruction effort will be Egyptian companies because of Egypt's economic capacity to contribute, to make that contribution, and also because of geographical factors, and also many other Arab and international stakeholders will be there. And of course, the pivotal challenge is funding, and this will require a huge contribution from the Europeans, from the Americans, from the wealthy Arab countries. There has to be contributions from every stakeholder for the financing, and also countries like Japan countries like China. These are very rich industrial countries that have to be involved also in this effort. This should be a universal effort by all the industrialized nations and the wealthy nations of the world in order to help alleviate the suffering of the Gaza Strip. And Egypt surely will contribute, but of course, its contribution will be proportionate to its own economic means. Egypt is a developing economy. Egypt is not a very wealthy nation, so that it cannot bear the brunt of reconstruction. $70 billion is a staggering figure.
Do you think this cost may possibly increase, given obviously the actual total tally of the people who have died or have been killed in the Gaza Strip is yet unknown? So obviously there's a lot of remains, human remains under the rubble. Is this going to increase the costs and increase the time it takes to reconstruct the areas?
Yes, as I was telling you at the beginning of the interview, this is an initial estimate, and the actual estimate might be larger, because the last estimate that was made back in a few months back during the Arab Emergency Summit was 50 billion. A few months later, now it is 70 billion. And any delay and any further degradation of the infrastructure of the Gaza Strip will definitely increase the cost, and any more humanitarian suffering for the people of Gaza, especially in terms of deprivation from basic necessities, will increase the cost naturally. So of course it's very important to put everything into order to establish a transitional government in Gaza, Palestinian government, not associated with Hamas, and with the reference point to the Palestinian Authority per the agreement or the consensus of all the mediators at this point. And even Hamas has agreed to this. And even though Hamas agreed to this, on the ground it's not acting accordingly. It is carrying out acts of vendetta against its opponents, against people she accuses of espionage and collaboration, even though this is completely not substantiated by any evidence. And it's disgusting, Graham, what Hamas is doing, to be very honest, right now in the Gaza Strip, and it conveys the wrong messages. Such behavior will only provide the Israelis with further pretexts in order to not comply with the agreement, and even potentially and tell the Americans, oh, look what the Palestinians are doing. They are at each other's throats. They are not even equipped to govern themselves. This is very dangerous, Rehan. And of course, the U.S., as we know, wants to put Gaza under an international trusteeship.
Yes, it gives them basically an excuse to do so. But I'm sorry, if we're running out of time, if we could just get Mr. Abdul Halim's opinion here as well. In your opinion, sir, what role can international partners like the U.S. and other regional organizations play when it comes to the Gaza recovery efforts?
I think that President Trump put in his plan all the clear mechanisms when it comes to the reconstruction, but before we look for international organization support, let's look at the history when it comes to that and what happened with the reconstruction after the genocide in 94 and what's happening now with them. They are flourishing, but there are also failed attempts like one. They did not focus on the core issues, and so this is the challenge here, getting the whole number. But the European Union, even before Trump's proposal, they wanted to reach a ceasefire and reconstruct Gaza, and so this is what the Egyptian leadership also is aiming for. They want to steer the European Union's support towards this, and also with what President Trump has said, all the efforts and the reconstruction in Gaza and reaching a ceasefire, and with what used peace to resolve this conflict between Israel and the countries in the region. And so this is what I think with the whole reconstruction thing.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir. That was Mr. Mohammed Abdul Halim, Director of the Egyptian Enterprise for Policy and Studies Center, and Mr. Mohammed Osman, an International Relations Specialist. Thank you both for your insights, and thank you for joining me here on In Depth. The figures may be daunting, but every number hides a human story waiting for renewal. And this brings us to the end of today's episode of In Depth. Thank you for joining us. I'm Rehan Morsi, and stay tuned for more here on Q News.